Seems legit.
Hey Legitimates, welcome back. I am doing another stained glass tote by Little Moo Designs, but in like some serious horror vibes that I've got going on. So this here is from Inklings in the Kraken. It glows in the dark and I love it. I've also changed the handles. The iron-on decal was either from Temu or AliExpress, I don't remember which. This is a discontinued vinyl also from Inklings in the Kraken. And then the inside fabric was a gift from a lady called Eileen. She got it in a mystery pack and it wasn't her jam. And I just thought it went perfectly for this. It's a pretty quick bag, as you can see by the time of the video. I did speed sew, but I also included all the ironing stuff. So if you want to come and watch me make it, let's go. Right, so I'm going to start with the lining. I have put interfacing on the back just to make it a little bit extra awesome. And I'm just doing a simple Tory pocket on the inside. So we're going to pick one side and I'm going to fold it in half and find the center of top and bottom, because the top one's probably helpful later. There. And then I've already drawn on this, but I have a sneaking suspicion. Oh no, I did do it the right way. Okay, so we're just going to put a snip in the center. So the best way, because it's directional, the best way to know is you put the zipper pocket there and then lift it up and it should be sitting the right way in front of you. So we're going to put right sides together, and I kind of want the zipper pocket not too close to the bottom. Also not too close to the top, because I'm going to have a magnet up the top. We don't want to distract that. Now you can see that that's very, very crooked. So I'm just going to straighten that up like so. I'm on a 2.5 stitch length. I'm going to go into that corner. We're going to stitch and back stitch. Back stitch. Pivot around to the other side. Stitch, back stitch. Trim the tails. I know I've made one of these before, but today I'm going to do a bit of speed sewing. So we're also a little bit all over the shop because I have to get up and iron the interfacing on and the decal and everything. We're going to do the Tory pocket so that I can do all the ironing at once and not get up and down a million times. So when I'm not recording a first off video, this would be more likely the order in which I do stuff. So that's done. I'm going to put that aside. Then I'm going to grab my two pieces like this, put them together. I love a good speed sewing, I really do. Now this pattern has a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so I'm going to stop at the 1/2 inch line, stitch down. Now again, because I'm speed sewing, I won't be clipping what isn't necessary, because it's just not how I operate. Even though I'm going to stitch something down, I am still going to stitch this open because it's going to help the bag lay flatter, because we've got the foam and everything else to put on it yet. So you won't see these stitches, but it is good practice to do top stitching. This is just so it will hold down and in place. All of these stitches will be hidden by all the accents I'm about to put on. Right. Speaking of access, this is the glow in the dark vinyl from Inklings and the Kraken. This one's also from Inklings, but she doesn't sell it anymore. My decal that I'm going to put on that you store at the start is from, I think I got the one from Temu or AliExpress. So this is just going to go over that line right in the center like so, and then I'm going to top stitch each side. Now you could change to a red if you wanted to, but I'm kind of feeling the black because it matches everything else. Now the bottom of this won't be seen, but I'm still going to stitch across out of habit. That separates. Then These will also need double-sided tape to sit where you want them to. This is how I sew when I'm not recording. I've usually got either music or like a series of something nonsensical playing, or something I've seen before. So I quite often have Criminal Minds on in the background, or House, or Supernatural. They're probably my top 3. It's just nice to have background noise, and sometimes music's better. So with this, you're gonna just rub it to make sure it stays. I did top and bottom so that the bottom won't move either, because we need to do all of this sewing before we put our foam on, because I don't want it to be all weird and puffy. Line it up like so, and then I'm just going to stitch along the top edge here. And I like to stitch around the edge because it just keeps it as one piece. This bit doesn't really have to be neat, you won't see it. You can be a little bit quicker and rougher with the whole thing. But it's mainly just to stop it moving. Like when you box the corners, it would be much easier to have it as one piece rather than the 2. So while that looks fiddly, it will be less fiddly later, and therefore worth it. So that's now the front of the bag, looking amazing. I had some choices with the back. I decided to just do it all in the print. I could have also just done a plain black. So many options to this bag. I've made a few of these now. As a quick tote, it goes pretty well. Line it up, and the other end like that. Okay. I'm top stitching 1/8 of an inch from the edge. I'm doing the edge I care about first, and then we can just smash out the other ones. I'm also probably going to run out of bobbin thread soon. I have no idea how much was on this when I started. I didn't look because I didn't care. I already had the black threaded from a previous project. And I'll just do another bobbin when I have to. You don't always have to be over prepared to make a bag. Sometimes it's fun to just sit down and start. Otherwise you over prep and then lose your motivation. Okay, so that's the accent on the front and the back. Now let's go and iron the foam on. Alright, I'm going to start with the easiest one first. So we're going to put this in upside down and on an angle like this, because the whole bag won't fit under in one press. So I'm going to line this up as best I can. And then I'm going to take my second, so I always put one underneath, because the one time I didn't, I melted and damaged the foam that's underneath. So I've got 2 of these Teflon sheets. If you don't have Teflon sheets, just use baking paper. It's what I used to do, it works fine. So then we're just going to push that down. I've got it on 180 degrees for 8 seconds. That's usually enough. And then it beeps when it's done. I do love my heat press. When I first got it, a lot of people were like, not that one, but I absolutely love this one. So each to their own, right? People like what they like. I'm not here to tell you what to like. I just give my suggestions. So doing the other side, and it should have stuck. If you find that it's not stuck, do another 8 seconds. I like to do it in 8-second intervals because I don't tend to burn anything by doing it this way. And then you always want to lay it down on a flat surface so it doesn't dry with like a crooked bit. Also, don't touch this, it's very, very hot. Right, now to do the more complicated side. So I am going to put the foam on first, and I will do the iron-on decal last. So again, we're going to line this up like so. Pop this on, making sure that you cover all of the foam. Because this is double-sided iron-on foam, both sides are sticky. And I just like to hold it so it doesn't droop and move, especially once it's in. You can let go now. While the beeping might be annoying to you, it is also, I find it quite handy. So I'm okay with the beeping. Put in the other side. Iron this one as well. And then we have to put in our decal. Just got a few different things. Swing it out the way. And then next what we're going to do is we're going to turn this over like so. Now I'm going to make sure that's out of my way. This will actually flip all the way around if I had it further off the wall. Now I just need to position this. So the problem that I have with this particular decal is we're going to lose probably some of his hair. But I'm kind of okay with that, to be honest. I'm going to put this down as far as it'll go. You can always trim off more of the paper if you need to. And then from here, I'm going to take a cloth. I want preferably cotton fabric. Let me just grab a piece. This will do, just a big piece of black. Because we don't want to melt the vinyl. I'm really always very, very paranoid about that. So I'm going to put that down. And I'm just going to put the sheet on as well. Just because I want to keep everything safe. And you can see that all of that just knocked out of the way. Ow, don't touch that, it's hot. And then 8 seconds. You can swing it, I usually don't swing it towards the door. Now, as always with these things, what we need to do is scratch at it. I have found with these, if you don't kind of push it onto the vinyl, it doesn't want to come off as easy. So, like when I try and peel this, see how it's not peeling properly? I'm going to do another 8 seconds. This is where it gets a little bit complex. Different ones of these will allow different amounts of heat. The last few that I've done didn't want to lift off at all. They were just being very, very stubborn about the whole thing. So I'm going to lay that down, pop that under, put the fabric back on top. I've got this doubled over. If you put too much heat, you will wreck your vinyl. So it's a bit of a balancing act between you need enough heat and not so much heat that you wreck your vinyl. Because then it's just a waste of everything. Okay, you can always just take this as well and kind of just push it on. See how it won't, see how it's not sticking? If you push on it, see how now it is? It just needs motivation to let go of the transfer sheet. At least that's what I call it. Sometimes it works straight off the bat, and then sometimes it's super, super stubborn. But you can see how where I'm drawing it's lifting off the sheet. That's what we want. Maybe we should get a scraper. Got my green scraper. It will still need more heat, but I promise this is helping, even if you don't think I'm right. Just that little bit's left. So we're going to heat it again because I could just rip that off, but I'm going to wreck the design and I really don't want to do that. So again, with the covering and the heat, push the button. Hopefully that's enough. You don't want to do too much heat at once on vinyl, you will wreck it. and it lifted. Did you see how it changed colour? So now I should, ow, careful, it's hot, just be able to lift that off. Ta-da! Alright, everything's ironed. Let's do these. I've put the double-sided tape on while that was on a phone call. You obviously know how to do that. Put it in the middle. Peel it off. We're going to squish it together. So I've got 3/4 inch on the black and I've got a 1/4 inch tape on the blood spatter. And I am altering this pattern to put the handles in the seam only because it's going to cover the iron-on decal, and that's kind of the point of the bag, is to have it there, and I don't want to like cut off any important bits or just any of it. So I'm going to put this into the seam instead. But I'm going to sew them now while I know I've got a decent amount of bobbin. I did check it. It's about 3/4 full. Alright. Flip it. We're going to put this over the join so you won't see any of it. Like that. Stick it down, and then I'm going to top stitch it. So because we won't see the ends, I'm not really worried about them. So I'm just going to jump to the other side because again, you're not going to see it. And then we can do the next one. I also got a brown zip with a gunmetal ring. The only hardware on this bag is going to be the zipper. So you can kind of go with whatever you like. I went with gunmetal because I liked it. And the brown, even though it doesn't go with the outside of the bag, it does go with the inside lining quite well. And since that's what it'll be against, I thought that would be a good option. An added thing you could do to this bag if you wanted to is to put a zipper overlay on the inside. I just haven't cut one, so we're not doing that. Just press it down slowly. Place it in the middle. Always throw your rubbish in the bin. It's good to keep your work area clean. I'm going to just do a few and then chop that one off. Not too fast, not too slow. It's not a race, but also I don't want to go so slowly that it takes forever. You'll find your happy zone. And then we're also going to cut off these tails. And that's the straps done. Fabulous. Pop them aside. I'm doing all the pieces and then we'll just do final construction. So, zipper, and I've just put on about 1/3. I'm going to lay it over this. See how the brown works really, really well with the lining? I'm going to go to a joining stitch length of 2.5. Different people have different normal stitch lengths, so you don't have to copy mine. I just let you know in case you're super new and don't know which one you want to do. Turn up. You'll notice I didn't backstitch because we're going to go the whole way around. I didn't need to. But you can if you want to. I just don't want to make the space as big of a deal. So we always zip the zipper up so that I can get a nice clean line around. Tuck your arms in, don't have them out like that. It's not good for your shoulders. Then I'm going to come up to here, go over a couple of stitches and back stitch. Even though I am speed sewing, always trim off your tails. Then I'm going to fold this down and I'm just going to stitch the two sides. Trim and trim. This fabric is so cute. It was a gift actually. someone got it in a mystery pack and it's just not their style, which I do understand that. Lots of things aren't my style. For example, I don't super love paisley in any way, shape or form. See how the brown suits really nicely? All right, I'm gonna grab our lining and I'm gonna sew the side seams. Just line them up with my hands. Seam allowance is 1/2 inch on this bag. It's also marked on the pattern pieces. So if at any point you wanted to make your seam allowances shorter, you could do that on the pattern pieces. Very cool. Let's do the other side. And I'm going to leave a big gap in the bottom to turn the bag through the bottom. Oh, actually, probably not. I might just turn it through the pocket because by the time I do that, it's going to be about the same size as the zipper pocket anyway. So when that's the case, we're just going to stitch all the way across. Like so, back stitch. Always trim off these tails. And then zigzag scissors. Although because it's a straight line, you don't have to use these ones. You could just use straight normal scissors. You only really want your zigzags on curves. Everything else is optional. But we want to cut this excess off because it'll help the bag sit in nicer. Again, you don't have to use the zigzags. For the outside, I'll probably just use straight scissors. Now, to box the corners, I put 2 fingers in and then bring it out so that that line lines up. And then stitch, back stitch, and then stitch and back stitch. Make sure you back stitch or tie it off at both ends. I'm not super worried about the seam allowance because I've chopped it down to zigzagginess, so it'll sit the way it's told, which will be lovely. Stitch, back stitch. And then turn it right sides out. Oh, that looks amazing. I like it. Okay, exterior. Right sides together. The first thing we're going to do is stitch the base, although you might want a few clips because this will get slippery and will move, and we don't want that. Now, if you're on a domestic machine, you might just want to make your foam a bit smaller so that it's not in the seam allowance. I'm not super worried though, as you can tell. There are quite a few layers here. It's like 4 layers of vinyl and 2 layers of foam. So it's not exactly the skinniest seam ever. I'm going to go up to a 4 stitch length. I'm going to open this out and just kind of roll it a little bit. And then there's a little trick to making sure that your box bottoms sit flat. I'm going to top stitch either side of the line with that seam open. Now this is the hardest bit because the seam might not necessarily want to stay open, as you can tell from my poking and prodding. And even double-sided tape won't necessarily help you for this. Flip it around. This will just help all of that bulk sit a bit flatter. You also notice I didn't trim it down. You can trim it down after if it's still bothering you. I didn't want to do it beforehand though, because then it gets too hard to stitch it down in place. That has just made it flat. So that now the bottom of the bag won't have like a ridge and it'll sit better. So I want to line up the side because that side, like the accent is important, and then we line up the top and then everything else just fits in between. Other side, line up that side, accent, which is the glow-in-the-dark blood spatter, and trust me, if it's a chunk out, you will notice it. So do the effort to use the clips to line it up. These other clips are just more for show than anything. They're not doing a whole lot. Right, back to adjoining stitch length. We do sew the bottom first so it's easier to get to. Then we can sew up these sides. Back stitch. Trim the tails. Put them in the bin. Wow! Stitch, back stitch. I just ran out of bobbin thread, but before I get into that, we're just going to trim that down. It's going to be much easier to sew, and it'll sit a lot nicer with less bulk down the side. That first bit's a little bit tricky to cut because of all the extra layers. Alright, bobbin. Bobbin's done, so let's do these boxed corners. So again, you want to line up that seam. The difference between lining and exterior is I plan on using clips. That's about the only difference. And this is stitched on flat, so you don't have to worry about which way the seam goes. Clip, clip, and clip. All right. So now we're just going to stitch this. Stitch and back stitch. I always do that slowly on this part because of all the bulk. I don't want to be snapping a needle unnecessarily. Make sure that you back stitch on both ends. Sometimes slow and steady really will win the race. If you did this at 100 miles an hour, you'd snap a needle and then spend the next 10 minutes changing it and finding the bits that snapped off. And you should always find the bits that snapped off in case they're in here doing damage. Alright, done. Happy days, look at that. Let's grab our handles, and I'm going to put this edge against here. I'm going to grab a ruler and I'm going to have them, I'm just making this up a little bit, but I'm thinking 3.5 inches from the outer edge. But I just want to check that on this side because I don't want to cover Michael Myers' head. See, that's too far. So we're going to have to go out to 2 3/4. Just so we're not right at his head. On the other hand, no, actually it won't necessarily matter because it's in the seam. It won't matter, it'll just come out at his head. That's not so bad. I'm going to show you what that looks like. It's just going to come right out next to his head like that. It won't necessarily matter because it's in the seam, so it's not going to cover him. If I was doing strap connectors, that would be a very different story. You can clip it to the exterior or the lining, it actually doesn't matter. It's your choice. I just like to put it on the exterior because it's firmer and less likely to make everything sag. That's all. So I'm going to put 2 clips on both of them, on like each end, not just one clip. And then I'm going to grab my interior and I'm going to put the zipper pocket on the opposite wall to all the fancy stuff. And I'm going to start by lining up the side seams. And I want to put 1 clip on each side of the side seam to hold it in place. And then I'm going to do the same to the opposite end. Here and here. Now, if you're using normal magnets, you may want to install them now before we go doing all of this. But I'm going to use a rivet magnet so I can do it later. And I'm going to put it right in the middle so it won't disrupt anything, really. I just love rivet magnets, if you guys haven't picked up on that yet, from the million times I've said it. I just wish I could find rainbow in an acceptable amount to buy. The only place I've found them, they want you to buy 1,000, and that's just a bit too many for me. I don't know if I'd go through 1,000 rainbow rivet magnets in a lifetime. Alright. It's all clipped. We've got no saggy bits, and that's the main reason why we clip so much of it. So, now the seam allowance is 1/2 inch, but I'm actually going to do 3/8 of an inch because it will chop off less of Michael Mars's head on the iron-on decal. And that's the only reason I'm doing less. It won't make the bag, because it's just a tote, it won't affect the overall bag, except it'll make it 1/8 of an inch taller. That's all it's going to do. It's not the be all and end all. You can do this kind of stuff with bags like this. We're just going to keep moving around, making sure that we don't accidentally stitch this half under. It can happen. I have done it before in the past. I wasn't paying attention and this got caught. Now I want to come to where all of those strap connectors are, and I'm going to stitch forward and back, forward, and just reinforce it so that whoever ends up with this bag, if they end up putting a lot of weight in it, it's not going to just fall apart. Which is lovely, because I really don't want that to happen. I'm not even being neat about this. You don't see it. And anybody opening up the bag, good luck to them. But I care more about the fact that I'm not going to lose my straps. No, somebody's not going to ring me a week and be like, oh no, the strap fell out. I mean, I obviously can't fix it, but to not have to fix it is obviously the ultimate goal. And even though that looks very, very messy, I'm good with it. Okay, birthing the bag through here. It's not terribly thick, so I'm not terribly worried. I'm just going to grab a corner, push it in, and then slowly turn the bag in on itself so I get this kind of tube looking thing, and then pull it through. Now, because I did so much heat on the iron-on decal, I'm not worried that it's going to come off. It's going quite well, considering it's like iron to vinyl. If you did it only a gentle iron, that would be a different story. But I did it hot repeatedly and for long enough that I'm not worried it's going to fall off. And even if it does, I can fix it. Bag fits through the pocket with not a great amount of effort. Everything obviously takes a little bit of effort. Then I'm going to push out the box corner. I personally don't super love box corners. I prefer to have a bag that has a bottom piece, but they take longer, therefore they cost more, and some people just want a pretty cheaper bag, and that's fine too. So I'm going to just fold in those raw edges, stitch it shut, top stitch it, and we're done. The top stitch will also be another layer of protection on the straps. And we're going to add a magnet. You don't have to have a magnet, by the way. You can just have it as an open tote. Not everybody wants and or uses a closure on the top of these style bags. Some do, not all. But look at the iron on, like it's fine. And we're like, right, we just clipped a little bit of his hair. I'm sure he'll get over it. I am going to put clips around here to hold it where I need it. We're also going to grab these and squish the seam at the sides because it's going to help. Oops. It's such a habit to put the clips on the outside, but we're going to stitch it with the lining side up, so that's why the clips are facing the lining. If I wanted to, I could either go to the cylinder arm and stitch this in the opposite way, or turn the bag inside out and stitch it other side up, or I could attempt to squish it all, but that's just painful. Or I squish it and stick it under the needle upside down. It can be done. I don't love having to do it. It gets messy. The other place you're going to want to squish is here where this seam is, because there's some bulk under there that you don't necessarily see, but you just want it to sit where you want it to sit. So by squishing it, it really does help, I promise. All right, happy days. I want to start over towards a side. I'm thinking this side. I'm going to go up to a 4 stitch length. Now, if you're new to bag making, do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and if you're not new, do an 1/8 of an inch. Or if you're new-ish and you want to try something new, try the skinnier one. And then we're just going to slowly move the bag around, keeping in mind all of those thicker spots and making sure the lining doesn't bunch up, because it is trying to. It's been a bit dodgy. And around. And around. By top stitching over the handles as well, it's just an added layer of protection. Make them stronger. I'm going to hold those 2 tails so that I don't accidentally get them all tangled, and then I'm going to get back to the start and I'm going to back stitch. Trim off said tails. Nice and close to the bag so that we don't have bits. If you do have bits, grab your fray thread zapper type thing and zap it down. So that's the bag. And then we just want to add, I'm going to add a magnet in the center to keep it shut. For that, you will need a rivet magnet, preferably. Where are my rivet magnets? Up higher. So I'm going to use a large one. You could also instead use 2 small ones, or you could use 2 large ones. I just want the one in the center. So between handle A and handle B, I'm going to mark it with my sewing awl. So I'm literally just going to stab it into the bag to create the hole. Then, to make my life easier, I grab some clips and clip both layers together. Alright, where the handles are matching. And then you can see the hole that I've stabbed. We're going to use the hole punch to punch the hole. Funny about that. We're going to go through all the layers at once, like that. Simple. Switch these out, maybe. And then, if you try and always put them back in the same spot in your box or whatever, it tends to be a lot more effective at getting them quicker. I know what they all are. Someone could come here, mess them all up, and I could tell you what they're all for, but we don't need such problems. Alright, so we're going to do the male bit first. So the male's going to go on the outside like this. I'm going to pop the cap on the top, and then I'm just going to put it under, and it clicks into place, and then squish it down. It's that simple. You don't use these for long, but they are super handy. If you were batch sewing, you do all the sewing and then come back and do all of the magneting. Also, this side will always take the base part with it because it's magnetic every time. And then that should magnetize together and it's done. So you just get the little stud there and that wraps around nicely, but there's still a little bit of a gap on both sides. You can also Tory squish this side to really get it to stick out if you need it to. But that's a really fun bag for a horror bag. And the back's just fun. And all of this white will glow in the dark after it's been charged in the sun. So if you go into a dark room, your bag will light up like a Christmas tree. Thanks for everyone for joining in. I'm sure I will see you at the next video. Bye-bye.